So I'm at the end of the sock. I have only 6 stitches left for the short rows and 12 stitches left for the long thing. So I'm just going to show you about my concept about the leading edge and the trailing edge. So this would be a trailing edge because I'm going to decrease my last stitch at the end of this row. So of course I can't knit it all because it's an unusual place. We'll get it. All right, so slip 1, knit 1, slip stitch over, knit 1, and the next part would be the leading edge of the next row. So I have 12 stitches left on this longer bit at the end of the toe. So at the leading edge, it's knit 1, knit 2 together, knit to the last 3 stitches, last 3 stitches. This is the trailing edge. So you slip 1, knit 1, slip the stitch over. If you get the whole stitch, you'll get it. Slip stitch over, knit 1, then we're on to the last needle, and for that it's the leading edge, all tangled, leading edge. So you knit 1 and you knit 2 together, and finish knitting that little row. Now I have 5 stitches, 5 stitches, and 10 stitches, and I want to join the 2 5s together so they're only on one needle. Put that needle down and you just knit it onto the final needle. And now I'm going to do the Kitchener stitch, or the toe grafting stitch. So you now have your wool on 2 needles with the tail facing away from you, and you can see how you've decreased the sock to the toe. So you put the long length of thread on a darning needle. Now when you do the Kitchener stitch, the end result of doing the Kitchener stitch is that you'll have continuous knitting across the toe. You won't have a lump or a. So anyways, and the other thing you need to remember is that each stitch you go through twice, except for the very first 2 stitches. So the front needle drops a stitch when you do insert the darning needle in a knit fashion. Bring the wool through, insert it into the next stitch in a purl fashion, but leave that on the needle. Now you work on the back needle. For the first stitch of the back needle, you insert it in a purl direction. All the stitches come off the back needle in a purl fashion. Then you reinsert it in a knit fashion. There you go, but you leave that on the needle. You don't let that fall off. So you insert it in the knit direction. Okay, now you're going back to the front row. Front row, you put it through in the knit direction, knot and all. You pull it off the needle because the front row loses the stitch in the knit direction. Then you do purl on the front row, and you leave that on the needle. Then you do purl on the back row. You take that off the needle. Now you've done purl on the back row. You're doing knit on the back row. Leave that on the needle. Knit through the front row. Take it off the needle. Run the thread through. Now you take that and you put it in a purl direction through the front row. And leave that on the needle. Now you go through the back row in a purl direction, and you take that off the needle. Of course, we're all stuck here, aren't we? Once again with the knot, I am going to take that knot off. Put it back on your needle. Now, where were we? We've taken, we're on the front row, so we're going to do a purl. We're going to do a knit through the back row because we just dropped a stitch off the back row. And do a knit through the front row. Drop it off. Purl through the front row. Leave it on. Purl through the back row. And you drop it off because you drop off the purl stitches for the back row. Now you go knit through the back row and leave it on the stitch. Leave it on the needle. Knit through the front row and drop it because you dropped the stitches on the front row. Now through the front row you do a purl and leave it on the needle. Whoops, that loop should not have happened. There you go. Purl through the back row. Drop the stitch, and now knit through the back row, but leave it on the stitch, leave it on the needle, knit through the front row, take it off the needle, now purl through that one, purl through the back row, and move it off because you always remove the purl stitches from the back row and the knit stitches from the front row. Knit through the back row, knit through the front row, which you remove because you always drop the knit stitches for the front row, purl through the front row, leave it on, purl through the back row, drop it, knit through the back row, leave it on, knit through the front row and drop it off, purl through the front row, purl through the back row, drop it off, knit through the back row, knit through the front row, and drop it off, purl through the front row, leave it on, purl through the back row, take it off, knit through the back row, knit through the front row, and drop that needle out, purl through the back row, and there you are. The Kitchener stitch, or toe grafting, and despite all our trials and tribulations, we seem to have it. It looks like it's completely, looks like you knit right across the toe. Then you just work in your ends.